Hello, this is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling, and I have a video of an article that I first wrote probably in about 1993. It's called Me and My Sparrow. I've changed it to Me and My Sparrows. One of my very favorite tools for explaining our vision on what marriage and relationship is like is a cute little story about a sparrow. If you've come to me for individual therapy or marriage counseling in the past 25 years, you've heard this story before. I've read it to you because I read it to everybody who comes, because it's a brilliant little story about what love is. It goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a non-conforming little sparrow who decided not to fly south for the winter. However, soon the weather turned so cold that he reluctantly started to fly south. In a short time, ice began to form on his wings, and he fell to the earth in a barnyard, almost frozen. Then a cow passed by and crapped all over the little bird. The sparrow thought his life was over, but in fact, the manure warmed him and defrosted his wings. Warm and happy and able to breathe, he started to sing. Just then, a cat comes by, hears the chirping, cleared away the manure, found the little bird, and promptly ate him. There are two morals to the story. Number one, everyone who craps on you isn't necessarily your enemy. They're your very best friend. They're saving your life. Number two, everyone who gets you out of the crap isn't necessarily your friend. In marriage, that can be a new boyfriend or girlfriend. Can help you feel less disconnected from love and more attractive and not in the pain of loneliness. But they are not your friend. They are your enemy. They are going to wreak havoc upon your finances and upon your children and upon your mental health and your standing in the community. Whereas the pain of your current marriage is meant to cause you to grow. So what am I saying? Am I saying being married is the purpose of it is to get pooped on? Yeah, that's exactly. If you've been married for very long, you've been pooped on. And it's there to help you. It's there to cause you to have insight into who you are and where you came from. So I've probably read this story in front of thousands of people throughout the years. I think it contains an incredible amount of wisdom. It is our strong belief that any and all spouses are gifts, whether you want to call it God or Mother Nature, to aid us in healing our unresolved wounds and unresolved issues from our childhood. As I've suggested to many clients through the years, that they should be thankful for the pain that their spouses have caused. I get smirks, I get frowns, I get facial expressions, sometimes I get cursed, that seem to suggest that perhaps I am the one needing psychological therapeutic services, which is no doubt quite true, but we all have a perfect radar system that unfailingly attracts us to exactly the right person whose unknowing mission is to hurt us in very similar ways that our parents hurt us when we were growing up. That's the nature of love, the nature and meaning of love. This is why children of alcoholics invariably marry alcoholics. Why abandoned children marry spouses who run off with the choir director. Why kids with controlling parents grow up and pick controlling spouses, etc., etc. This very much so applies to your marriage as well. I've proven this to every open-minded couple who's ever sat in front of me, and it's very easy for me to prove it. I just gather who you tell me about, your mom, your dad, spouse number one, boyfriend number two, whoever you've been involved with, put it on the board in black and white and it'll blow you away, because there are patterns that are clearly seen. So when it's spelled out in black and white, it's very difficult to argue with. They say that love is blind, and in a way that's true. During the powerful early enmeshment stage, we're blinded to many of the ways that our new significant other is actually like our parents or like our most hurtful parent. In a way, they're disguised. In our enthusiasm and our over-idealizing of the object of our desires, we miss out on just who they are and why we are so strongly attracted to them and not as attracted to other possibilities. The family tree counseling brand of therapist encourages therapists to open up and share about their issues, their vulnerabilities. We feel that this is both healthy and extremely instructive to our clients. A great therapist is a very flawed human being who's done a lot of work and a lot of their own healing. Great therapists are not produced in graduate schools. They are birthed on the receiving end of the therapist's couch. So I'd like to share a little bit about my story and about the sparrows who pooped on me and the ways that I've been the cow pooping on the sparrows. I come from a very wonderful yet highly dysfunctional family. Both my parents were very wounded. My dad's mother was 14 years old when he was born. We're Pennsylvania hillbillies from Butler, Pennsylvania. And my dad's father denied that he was his biological father, and his stepfather abused him both physically and verbally. And he grew up in such stark poverty that he didn't have a shirt to graduate in when he graduated from high school. And he was a very self-absorbed and lost and sad and helpless little boy walking around in my father's body. My mother was a product of a married man who took advantage of my grandmother when she was a teenager, a late teenager, when she was babysitting his wife, this man's children and his wife's children. So then my mother was shipped off to an orphanage for several years. And then when my grandmother met and married my grandfather, she just picked her up from the orphanage and never shared with her the secret that Granddad really wasn't her father. So my mother grew up not understanding why her father rejected and abused her. So when a handsome Air Force fellow with a cool car proposed, she jumped at the opportunity to get away from her tyrant of a father. And it was either going to be the marriage or a monastery, and my mom was too much fun just to go to the monastery. So these very confused, very lost, deeply wounded young people decided it was a good idea to produce 4 children by the time my mother was 22, and 3 more by the time she was 30. I was child number 2. My dad was really never there for us. He was either in Vietnam, which he volunteered to go to stay away from my mother, if that tells you anything, or he was playing bridge addictively, or reading the paper, or watching TV, or eating, or otherwise occupied. My mother had all the responsibility of 7 children, and it made her angry, overwhelmed, and self-destructive. And I grew up walking on eggshells trying to avoid her shrieking rage. Also, when I was born, my mother was sick and she had gallbladder problems, and I was induced. I came out screaming. My mother couldn't take care of me, and then I became allergic to pretty much all food. And the gist of it is my mother and I never bonded. My little brother came along, and he was blue-eyed and wonderfully natured and never cried and was easy to take care of. And when I was 2 years old and my mom would walk in the room, I would storm out angry and hurt. I met my former wife during my second year of college at Taylor University. And there was just something intriguing about her quiet demeanor. When I would return home from a very horrible, painful weekend where I saw rage and experienced hurtfulness, she'd listen to me and she'd wipe away my tears and she'd hold me. And she loved me like I had never been loved before. She was quiet and nurturing and sweet and generous and strong and stable. In other words, she was the exact opposite of my mother. And during our long, lingering hugs in front of South Hall, I felt waves of powerful, unconditional, liquid love surging between us. I had become a committed Christian, and I was certain that my wonderful new loves of both Lisa and Jesus would heal me and put into the past forever the sadness and the brokenness of my very, very painful childhood. And unfortunately, it doesn't really work that way. I was not aware of any flaws that my beloved had, and she at least wasn't mentioning any of mine. We didn't fight, we prayed a lot, and our love grew every day. I know that this was our enmeshment stage. Everyone who's ever fallen in love has gone through enmeshment, and it's addictive and bonding and wonderful and just a whole lot of fun. The problem is that it just doesn't last. So what most people do is they pick their type. They're attracted to their type, which is basically the same psychological DNA as the person who hurt you the most, the worst. So if you have a controlling, raging dad, you're going to pick a controlling, raging partner generally, or become one. But what I did, what a lot of counter-dependent people do is they pick their anti-type. I picked the opposite of my mother. My type was my mother, but if I'd have gone out with somebody like my mother, there wouldn't have been a date number 2. So my former wife was stable, non-reactive, but there was also a lack of chemistry for the long haul. There were no nightmarish incidences, but in a subtle way she was critical, emotionally withholding, unavailable, very busy, and she really was the opposite of my mother. So in midlife, which is often the case for people who pick anti-types, somebody who is your type comes along in a very attractive package, and that abandoned infantile little boy loses his mind. So in my current relationship, which started about a year or two after the marriage ended, was of course my fiancée Betsy, and she is my type, and my type is unstable, reactive, critical, abandoning. There are unfortunately just some nightmarish interactions, but we do have strong chemistry, and she is like my mother. So this is love, people. The vast majority of people, you pick your type. And so write on a piece of paper the worst qualities of your paper, or of your parents, I mean. You write them down on the board or on a piece of paper, and then write down the worst qualities of your significant other, and you will see a pattern. They will either be your anti-type or most likely your type. So if you think your marriage isn't broken and dysfunctional, give it 7 to 10 years and then come talk to me. When the enmeshment wears off and your spouse starts to knock down your defenses and touch you in your deeply wounded spots, then I like to say your marriage is sort of in purgatory. But through a lot of very hard and painful work, through quality therapy, accountability, vulnerable communication, recovery, insight, voicing needs directly and non-reactively, couples can reach up and occasionally taste a marriage that includes some slices of heaven. Unfortunately, what takes place more often is not that couples reach up and snatch some heaven, but they descend into an awful marital hell through finger pointing and rage and victim mentality and shaming and blaming and reactivity and just not understanding what marriage is and who they are and where they came from and why they married who they married. All is fair in love and marriage. We pick who we need to pick, and they collude with us to create and recreate our hurtful childhoods so that Mother Nature and God can have a chance to heal us at our very cores. I've healed so much in my interactions with Betsy, because it's very much like interacting with my mother. And when I get stability and tenderness and affection from Betsy, it's sort of like it really means something, because it's like I'm getting it from my mother. Anyone who's ever been in a relationship has been in therapy. The relationship's the therapy, not going to some therapist's office. And yes, the purpose of marriage is to cause you pain, to tear down your psychological defense mechanisms so that Mother Nature can give you an opportunity to sit in front of somebody like me who can help you, who can explain it to you, and can help the wounded little boy or wounded little girl at your core heal. But that happens because you get pooped on real good by your spouse or by a series of spouses who love you with the same dysfunctional and destructive love that you grew up with. So, me and my sparrow, and now my sparrows. I hope for most of you that you just have one relationship, one marriage, and that you stay in it, and that you learn what you need to learn, and that you don't have to go through the rigors and the pain and the hurtfulness of divorce. If you haven't joined our channel, join Family Tree Counseling channel on YouTube. And if you haven't been to our website, visit familytreecounseling.com. We have 6 books on there that are very powerful and very helpful. One on abandonment, one on shame, one on marital issues, one on affair recovery, one on counterdependency, and also a book on general recovery issues. Also, if you don't have an excellent therapist close to you and you would like to work with me or with most of the therapists on our staff, then contact me through email, familytreecounseling@juno.com, and I'll put something up on the screen. And we'll get something set up, and we'll get you the help that you need. So thank you for watching today, and God bless.